On this video, I'm going to carry on the MasterKey system, book written by Charles F.Haanel. I'm on page 109, part 12. I'm going to start from the beginning. Part 12. This part tells of numerous counterfeits and perversions by which many are led to think that something can be had for nothing. There's no royal road to success. We must give before we can get. If we cannot give money, we must give service. We must give time and thought. The law of compensation demands an eye for an eye. It tells how we may create the implements by which we may put into operation the law by which we can gain access to the unlimited resources of nature. In the fourth paragraph, you will find the following statements. You must first have the knowledge of your power. Second, the courage to dare. Third, the faith to do. If you concentrate upon the thoughts if you give them your entire attention, you will find a world of meaning in each sentence and will track to yourself other thoughts in harmony with them. And you will soon grasp the full significance of the vital knowledge upon which you are concentrating. Knowledge does not apply itself. We as individuals must make the application, and the application consists in fertilizing the thought with a living purpose. The time and thought which most persons waste in aimless effort would accomplish wonders if properly directed with some special object in view. In order to do this, it is necessary to center your mental force upon a specific thought and hold it there to the exclusion of all other thoughts. If you have ever looked through the focusing screen of a camera, you found that when the object was not in focus, the impression was indistinct and possibly blurred. But with the proper focus was obtained, the picture was clear and distinct. This illustrates the power of concentration. Unless you can concentrate upon the object which you have in view, you will have but a hazy, indifferent, vague, indistinct, and blurred outline of your ideal, and the results will be in accordance with your mental picture. Number 1. There's no purpose in life that cannot be best accomplished through a scientific understanding of the creative power of thought. Number 2. The power to think is common to all. Man is because he thinks. Man's power to think is infinite. Consequently, his creative power is unlimited. And we'll carry on. Sorry, I got lost here. Number 3. We know that thought is building for us the thing we think of and actually bringing it nearer. Yet we find it difficult to banish fear, anxiety, or discouragement, all of which are powerful thought forces and which continually send the things we desire further away, so that it is often one step forward and 2 steps backward. Number 4. The only way to keep from going backward is to keep going forward. Eternal vigilance is the price of success. There are 3 steps, and each one is absolutely essential. You must first have the knowledge of your power. Second, the courage to dare. Third, the faith to do. 5. With this as a basis, you can construct an ideal business, an ideal home, ideal friends, ideal environment. You are not restricted as to material or cost. Thought is omnipotent and has the power to draw on the infinite bank of primary substance for all that is required. Infinite resources are therefore at your command. Number 6. But your ideal must be sharp, clear-cut, definite. To have one ideal today, another tomorrow, and a third next week means to scatter your forces and accomplish nothing. Your result will be a meaningless and chaotic combination of wasted material. Number 7. Unfortunately, this is a result which many are securing, and the cause is self-evident. If a sculptor started out with a piece of marble and a chisel and changed his ideal every 15 minutes, what result could he expect? And why should you expect any different result in molding the greatest and most plastic of all substances, the only real substance? Number 8. The result of this indecision and negative thought is often found in the law of material wealth. Supposed independence, which required many years of toil and effort, suddenly disappears. It is often found that money and property are not independent at all. On the contrary, the only independence is found to be practical working knowledge of the creative power of thought. The practical working method cannot come to you until you learn that the only real power which you can have is the power to adjust yourself to divine and unchangeable principles. You cannot change the infinite, but you can come into an understanding of natural laws. The reward of this understanding is a conscious realization of your ability to adjust your thought faculties to the universal thought which is omnipresent. Your ability to cooperate with omnipotence will indicate the degree of success with which you meet. Number 10. The power of thought has many counterfeits, which are more or less fascinating, but the results are harmful instead of helpful. Number 11. Of course, those who harbor thoughts of this kind must inevitably reap exactly what they have sown. Number 12. Again, there are the phenomena seekers who gourmandize on the so-called proofs and demonstrations obtained at materializing seances. They throw upon the mental forces and soak themselves in the most poisonous currents which can be found in the psychic world. They do not seem to understand that it is the ability to become negative, receptive, and passive, and thus drain themselves of all their vital force, which enables them to bring about these vibratory thought forms. Number 13. There are also the Hindu worshippers who see in the materializing phenomena, which are performed by the so-called adepts, a source of power, forgetting or never seeming to realize that as soon as the will is withdrawn, the forms wither, and the vibratory forces of which they are composed vanish. Number 14. Telepathy, or thought transference, has received considerable attention, but as it requires a negative mental state on the part of the receiver, the practice is harmful. A thought may be sent with the intention of hearing or seeing, but it will bring the penalty attached to the inversion of the principle involved. Number 15. There are those who seem to think that they can sow seed of one kind and by willpower make it bear fruit of another. But the idea of thus forcing a compliance with our wishes antagonizes the very power which it is seeking to use. Number 16. All of these perversions have a temporary satisfaction, and for some a keen fascination, but there is an infinitely greater fascination in a true understanding of the world of power within. A power which increases with use is permanent instead of fleeting, which not only is potent as a remedial agency to bring about the remedy for past errors or results of wrong thinking, but is a prophylactic agency protecting us from all manner and form of danger. And finally, is an actual creative force with which we can build new conditions and new environment. Number 17. The law is that thought will correlate with its object and bring forth in the material world the correspondence of the thing thought or produced in the mental world. We then discern the absolute necessity of seeking that every thought has the inherent germ of truth, in order that the law of growth will bring into manifestation for good alone can confer any permanent power. Number 18. The principle which gives the thought the dynamic power to correlate with its object, and therefore to master every adverse human experience, is the law of attraction, which is another name for love. This is an eternal and fundamental principle inherent in all things, in every system, philosophy, in every religion, and every science. There is no getting away from the law of love. It is feeling that imparts vitality to thought. Feeling is desire, and desire is love. Thought impregnated with love becomes invincible. Number 19. We find this truth emphasized wherever the power of thought is understood. The universal mind is not only intelligence, but it is substance. And this substance is attractive force which brings electrons together by the law of attraction. So that they form atoms. The atoms in turn are brought together by the same law and form molecules. Molecules take objective forms, and so we find that the law of love is the creative force behind every manifestation, not only of atoms, but of worlds, of the universe, of everything of which the imagination can form any conception. 20. It is operation of this marvelous law of attraction which has caused men in all ages and all times to believe that there must be some personal being who responded to their petitions and desires and manipulated events in order to comply with their requirements. Number 21. It is a combination of thought and love which forms the irresistible force called the law of attraction. All natural laws are irresistible. The law of gravitation, or electricity, or any other law operates with mathematical exactitude. There is no variation. It is only the channel of distribution which may be imperfect. If a bridge falls, we do not attribute the collapse to any variation of the law of gravitation. If a light fails us, we do not conclude that the laws governing electricity cannot be depended upon. And if the law of attraction seems to be imperfectly demonstrated by an inexperienced or uninformed person, we are not to conclude that the greatest and most infallible law upon which the entire system of creation depends has been suspended. We should rather conclude that a little more understanding of the law is required, for the same reason that a correct solution of a difficult problem in mathematics is not always readily and easily obtained. Number 22. Things are created in the mental or spiritual world before they appear in the outward act or event. By the simple process of governing our thought forces today, we help create the events which will come into our lives in the future, perhaps even tomorrow. Educated desire is the most potent means of bringing into action the law of attraction. Number 23. Man is so considered that he must first create the tools or implements by which he gains the power to think. The mind cannot comprehend an entirely new idea until a corresponding vibratory brain cell has been prepared to receive it. This explains why it is so difficult for us to receive or appreciate an entirely new idea. We have no brain cell capable of receiving it. We are therefore incredulous. We do not believe it. Number 24. If therefore you have not been familiar with the omnipotence of the law of attraction and the scientific method by which it can be put into operation, or if you have not been familiar with the unlimited possibilities which it opens to those who are enabled to take advantage of the resources it offers, begin now and create the necessary brain cells which will enable you to comprehend the unlimited powers which may be yours by cooperating with natural law. This is done by concentration or attention. Number 25. Intention governs the attention. Let me repeat that. The intention governs the attention. Power comes through repose. It is by concentration that deep thoughts, wise speech, and all forces of high potentiality are accomplished. 26. It is in the silence that you get into touch with the omnipotent power of the subconscious mind, from which all power is evolved. Number 27. He who desires wisdom, power, or permanent success of any kind will find it only within. It is an unfolding. The unthinking may conclude that the silence is very simple and easily attained, but it should be remembered that only in absolute silence may one come into contact with divinity itself. Many learn of the unchangeable law and open for himself the channels by which persistent practice and concentration lead to perfection. Number 28. Now go to the same room, take the same chair, the same position as heretofore. Be sure to relax, let go, both mentally and physically. Always do this. Never try to do any mental work under pressure. See that there are no tense muscles or nerves, that you are entirely comfortable. Now realize your unity with omnipotence. Get into touch with this power. Come into a deep and vital understanding, appreciation, and realization of the fact that your ability to think is your ability to act upon the universal mind and bring it into manifestation. Realize that it will meet any and every requirement, that you have exactly the same potential ability which any individual ever has had or ever will have, because each is but an expression or manifestation of the one. Of all parts of the one, all are parts of the whole. There's no difference in kind of quality, the only difference being one of degree. Part 12. Number 111. How may any purpose in life be best accomplished? Answer: through a scientific understanding of the spiritual nature of thought. Number 112. What 3 steps are absolutely essential? Answer: the knowledge of our power, the courage to dare, the faith to do. Number 113. Number 113. Just a moment. What is the practical working knowledge? Number 113. How is the practical working knowledge secured? Answer: by an understanding of natural laws. 114. What is the reward of an understanding of these laws? A conscious realization of our ability to adjust ourselves to define and unchanging principles. Number 115. What will indicate the degree of success with which we meet? Answer: the degree in which we realize that we cannot change the infinite, but we must cooperate with it. Number 116. What is the principle which gives thought its dynamic power? Answer: the law of attraction, which rests on vibration, which in turn rests upon the law of love. Thought impregnated with love becomes invincible. Number 117. Why is this law irresistible? Because it is a natural law. All natural laws are irresistible and unchangeable and act with mathematical exactitude. There's no deviation or variation. Number 118. Why then does it sometimes seem to be difficult to find a solution to our problems in life? Answer: for the same reason that it is sometimes difficult to find the correct solution to a difficult mathematical problem. The operator is uninformed or inexperienced. Number 19. Why is it impossible for the mind to grasp an entirely new idea? Answer: we have no corresponding vibratory brain cell capable of receiving the idea. Number 120. How is the wisdom secured? Answer: by concentration. It is unfolding, it comes from within. Thought cannot conceive of anything that may not be brought to expression. He who first uttered it may be only the suggester, but the doer will appear. Part 13. This part explains why certain forms of thoughts often result in disaster and frequently sweep away the result of a lifetime of effort. It explains the modern method of thinking and shows how actual, tangible results are thereby secured, and how conditions must change in order to meet the requirements of a changed consciousness. It explains the process by which this change is brought about and how we may listen to it. Physical science is responsible for the marvelous age of invention in which we are now living, but spiritual science is now setting out on a career whose possibilities no one can foretell. Spiritual science has heretofore been the football of the uneducated, the superstitious, the mystical, but men are now interested in definite methods and demonstrated facts only, we have come to know that thinking is a spiritual process, that vision and imagination precede action and event, that the day of the dreamer has come. The following lines by Mr. Herbert Kaufman, relating to people first dream and then achieve, are interesting in this connection. Quote, "They are the architects of greatness. Their vision lies within their souls. They peer beyond the veils and mists of doubt and pierce the walls of unborn time. The belted wheel, the trail of steel, the churning screw are shuttles, and the loom on which they weave their magic tapestries. Makers of empire, they have fought for bigger things than crowns and higher seats than thrones. Your homes are set upon a land that dreamers built to greatness. The pictures on its walls are visions from the souls of dreamers." Quote, "They are the chosen few, the blazes of the way. Walls crumble and empires fall. The tidal wave sweeps from the sea and tears a fortress from its rocks. The rotting nations drop from time. The rotting nations drop from off time's bow, and only things the dreamers make live on." Part 13 tells why the dreams of the dreamer come true. It explains the law of causation, by which dreamers, inventors, authors, organizers bring about the realization of their desires. It explains the law by which the thing pictured upon our mind eventually becomes our own. 1. It has been a tendency, and as might be proved, a necessity for science to seek an explanation of everyday facts by generalization of those others which are less frequent and form the exception. Thus does the eruption of the volcano manifest the heat which is continually at work in the interior of the world of the earth, and to which the latter owes much of her configuration. Number 2. Thus does the lightning reveal a subtle power constantly busy to produce change in the inorganic world. And as dead languages, now seldom heard, were once ruling among the nations, so does a giant tooth in Siberia, or a fossil in the depth of the earth, not only bear record of the evolution of past ages, but thereby explain to us the origin of the hills and valleys which we inhabit today. Number 3. In this way, a generalization of facts which are rare, strange, or form the exception has been a magnetic needle guiding to all the discoveries of inductive science. Number 4. This method is founded upon reason and experience, and thereby destroyed superstition, precedent, and conventionality. It is more than 300 years since Bacon recommended this method of study, to which the civilized nations owe the greater part of their prosperity and the more valuable part of their knowledge, purging the mind from narrow prejudices, denominating theories more effectively than by the keenest irony, calling the attention of men from heaven to earth more successfully by surprising experiments than by the most forcible demonstrations of their ignorance, educating the inventive faculties more powerfully by the near prospect of useful discoveries throw open to all, than by talk of bringing to light the innate laws of our mind. Number 6. The method of Bacon has seized the spirit and aim of the great philosophies of Greece and carried them into effect by the new means of observation. With another age offered, thus gradually revealing a wondrous field of knowledge in the infinite space of astronomy, in the microscopic age of embryology and the dim age of geology, disclosing an order of the pulse which the logic of Aristotle could never have unveiled, and analyzing into formerly unknown elements the material combinations which no dialectic of the scholastics could force apart. Number 7. It has lengthened life. It has mitigated pain. It has extinguished diseases. It has increased the fertility of the soil. It has given new securities to the mariner. It has spanned great rivers with bridges of form unknown to our fathers. It has guided the thunderbolt from heaven to earth. It has lightened up night with the splendor of day. It has extended the range of human vision. It has multiplied the power of the human muscles. It has accelerated motion. It has annihilated distance. It has facilitated intercourse, correspondence, all friendly offices, all dispatch of business. It has enabled men to descend into the depths of the sea, to soar into the air, to penetrate securely into the noxious recesses of the earth. Number 8. This then is the true nature and scope of induction. But the greater the success which men have achieved in deductive science, the more does the whole tenor of their teachings and example impress us with the necessity of observing carefully, patiently, accurately, with all the instruments and resources at our command, the individual facts before venturing upon a statement of general law. Number 9. We ascertain the bearing of the spark drawn from the electric machine under every variety of circumstances, that we thus may be emboldened with Franklin to address in the form of a kite the question to the cloud about the nature of the lightning. We assure ourselves with exactness of Galileo of the manner in which bodies fall, that with Newton we may dare to ask the moon about the force that fastens it to the earth. Number 10, in short, by the value we set upon truth, by our hope in a steady and a universal progress, by our resolve not to permit a tyrannical prejudice to neglect or mutilate unwelcome facts, we rear the superstructure of science upon the broad and unchangeable basis of full attention, paid to the most isolated as well as the most frequent phenomena. Number 11, an ever-increasing material may be collected by observation, but accumulated facts differ in the value to assist the explanation of nature. And as we esteem most highly those useful qualities of men which are of the rarest occurrence, so does natural philosophy sift the facts and attach a preeminent importance to that striking class which cannot be accounted for by the usual and daily observation of life. Number 12. If then we find that certain persons seem to possess unusual power, what are we to conclude? Firstly, you may say, it is not so, which is simply an acknowledgement of our lack of information, because every honest investigator admits that there are many strange and heretofore unaccountable phenomena constantly occurring. Those, however, who become acquainted with the creative power of thought will no longer consider them unaccountable. Number 13. Secondly, we may say that they are the result of supernatural interference, but a scientific understanding of natural laws will convince us that there is nothing supernatural. Every phenomenon is a result of an accurate, definite cause, and that cause is an immutable law or principle, which operates with invariable precision, whether the law is put into operation consciously or unconsciously. 14. Thirdly, we may say that we are on forbidden ground, that there are some things which we should not know. This objection was used against every advance in human knowledge. Every individual who ever advanced a new idea, whether a Columbus, a Darwin, a Galileo, a Watt, a Fulton, a Stephenson, a Faraday, or an Emerson, was subjected to ridicule or persecution. Hence, this objection should receive no serious consideration. On the contrary, we should carefully consider every fact which is brought to our attention. By doing so, this will more readily ascertain the law upon which it is based. It will be found that the creative power of thought will explain every possible condition of experience, whether physical, mental, or spiritual. Number 16. Thought will bring about conditions in correspondence with the predominant mental attitude. Therefore, fear is a powerful form of thought. If we fear disaster, disaster will be the certain result of our thinking. It is this form of thought which frequently sweeps away the result of many years of toil and effort. Number 17. If we think of some form of material wealth, we may secure it. By concentrated thought, the required conditions will be brought about, and the proper effort put forth which result in bringing about the circumstances necessary to realize our desire. But we often find that when we secure the things we thought we wanted, they do not have the effect we expected. That is the satisfaction is only temporary, or possibly is the reverse of what we expected. Number 18. What then is a proper method of procedure? What are we to think in order to secure what we really desire? What you and I desire, what we all desire, what everyone is seeking, is happiness and harmony. If we can be truly happy, we shall have everything the world can give. If we are happy ourselves, we can make others happy. Number 19. But we cannot be happy unless we have health, strength, congenial friends, pleasant environment, sufficient supply, not only to take care of our necessities, but to provide for those comforts and luxuries which we are entitled. Number 20. The old orthodox way of thinking was to be a worm, to be satisfied with our portion, whatever it is. But the modern idea is to know that we are entitled to the best of everything, that the Father and I are one, and that the Father is the universal mind and creator, the original substance from which all things proceed. Number 21. Now, admitting that this is all true in theory, and it has been taught for 2,000 years, and is the essence of every system of philosophy or religion, how are we to make it practical in our lives? How are we to get the actual tangible results here and now? Number 22. In the first place, we must put our knowledge into practice. Nothing can be accomplished in any other way. The athlete may read books and lessons on physical training all his life, but unless he begins to give out strength by actual work, he will never receive any strength. He will eventually get exactly what he gives, but he will have to give it first. It is exactly the same with us. We shall get exactly what we give, but we shall have to give it first. It will then return to us manyfold, and the giving is simply a mental process because thoughts are causes and conditions are effects. Therefore, in giving thoughts of courage, inspiration, health, or help of any kind, we are getting causes in motion, which will bring about their effect. Number 23. Thought is a spiritual activity and is therefore creative, but make no mistake. Thought will create nothing unless it is consciously, systematically, and constructively directed. And herein is the difference between idle thinking, which is simply a dissipation of effort, and constructive thinking, which means practically unlimited achievement. Number 24. We have found that everything we get comes to us by the law of attraction. A happy thought cannot exist in an unhappy consciousness. Therefore, the consciousness must change. And as the consciousness changes, all conditions necessary to meet the changed consciousness must gradually change in order to meet the requirements of the new situation. Number 25. In creating mental image or an ideal, we are projecting a thought into universal substance, from which all things are created. The universal substance of omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Are we to inform the omniscient as to the proper channel to be used to materialize our demand? Can the finite advise the infinite? This is the cause of failure. Every failure. We recognize the omnipresence of the universal substance, but we fail to appreciate the fact that this substance is not only omnipresent, but is omnipotent and omniscient, and consequently will set causes in motion concerning which we may be entirely ignorant. Number 26. We can best conserve our interests by recognizing the infinite power and infinite wisdom from the universal mind. In this way, we become a channel whereby the infinite can bring about the realization of our desire. This means that recognition brings about realization. Therefore, for your next exercise, make use of the principle. Recognize the fact that you are a part of the whole, and that a part must be the same in kind and quality as the whole. That's the only difference there can possibly be is in degree. When this tremendous fact begins to permeate your consciousness, when you really come into realization of the fact that you, not your body, but the ego, the I, the spirit, which thinks, is an integral part of that great whole, that is the same in substance, in quality, in kind, that the Creator could create nothing different from Himself. You'll also be able to say, the Father and I are one, and you will come into an understanding of the beauty, the grandeur, the transcendental opportunities which have been placed at your disposal. On page 122. Increase to me that wisdom which discovers my truest interests. Strengthen my resolution to perform that which wisdom dictates. Franklin. Part 13. 121. What is the method by which natural philosophies obtain and apply their knowledge? To observe individual facts carefully, patiently, accurately, with all the instruments and resources at their command before venturing upon a statement of general laws. Number 122. How may we be certain that this method is correct? By not permitting a tyrannical prejudice to neglect or mutilate unwelcome facts. Number 123. What class of facts is esteemed most highly? Answer: those which cannot be accounted for by the usual daily observations of life. 124. Upon what is the principle founded? Answer: upon reason and experience. 125. What does it destroy? Superstition, precedent, and conventionality. 126. How have these laws been discovered? By a generalization of facts which are uncommon, rare, strange, and form the exception. 127. How may we account for much of the strange and heretofore unexplainable phenomena which constantly taking place? Answer: by the creative power of thought. 128. Why is it so? Because when we learn of a fact, we can be sure that it is the result of a certain definite cause, and that this cause will operate with invariable precision. 129. What is the result of this knowledge? It will explain the cause of every possible condition, whether physical, mental, or spiritual. 130. How will our best interests be conserved? By a recognition of the fact that a knowledge of the creative nature of thought puts us in touch with infinite power. The old thoughts never die. Immortal dreams outlive the dreamers and are ours for aye. No thought, once formed and uttered, ever can expire. McKay. Page 124, part 14. Thank you for joining me, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It's much appreciated. This part explains the source of all power, wisdom, and intelligence, and how we may bring it into harmonious relations in our affairs. It shows that those who understand the principles get results in exact accordance with their understanding and their ability to make the proper application. This opens up possibilities hitherto undreamed of by an orderly sequence of law. It explains the source of all energy and all substance and the method by which this universal substance is differentiated into form. It explains the nature of electrons and of cells, upon which the maintenance of health and life depends. It explains how we may bring about radical changes in our lives, and what the result of such changes must necessarily be. You have found from your study thus far that thought is a spiritual activity and is therefore endowed with creative power. This does not mean that some thought is creative. All thought is creative, and thought can be used in a negative way through the process of denial. The conscious and subconscious are but two phases of action in connection with one mind. The relation of the subconscious to the conscious is quite analogous to the existing between a weather vane and the atmosphere. Just as the least pressure of the atmosphere causes an action on the part of the weather vane, so does the least thought entertained by the conscious mind produce within your subconscious mind action in exact proportion to the depth of feeling characterizing the thought and the intensity with which the thought is indulged. It follows that if you deny unsatisfactory conditions, you are withdrawing the creative power of your thought from these conditions. You're cutting them away at the root. You are sapping their vitality. Remember that the law of growth necessarily governs every manifestation in the objective, so that a denial of unsatisfactory conditions will not bring about instant change. A plant will remain visible for some time after its shoots have been cut, but it will gradually fade away and eventually disappear. So the withdrawal of your thought from the contemplation of unsatisfactory conditions will gradually but surely terminate these conditions. You will see that this is an exactly opposite course from the one which we would naturally be inclined to adopt. It will therefore have an exactly opposite effect to the one usually secured. Most persons concentrate intently upon an unsatisfactory condition, thereby giving the condition that measure of energy and vitality which is necessary in order to supply a vigorous growth. Number 1. The universal energy in which all motion, light, heat, and color have their origin does not partake of the limitation of the many effects of which it is the cause, but it is supreme over them all. The universal substance is the source of all power, wisdom, and intelligence. Number 2. To recognize this intelligence is to acquaint yourself with the knowing quality of mind and through it to move upon the universal substance and bring it into harmonious relations in your affairs. This is something that the most learned physical science teacher has not attempted, a field of discovery upon which he has not yet launched. In fact, by few of the materialistic schools have ever caught the first ray of this light. It does not seem to have dawned upon them that wisdom is just as much present everywhere as are force and substance. Number 4, some will say, if these principles are true, why are we not demonstrating them? As a fundamental principle is obviously correct. Why do we not get proper results? We do. We get results in exact accordance with our understanding of the law and our ability to make the proper application. We secured no results from the law governing electricity until someone formulated the law and showed us how to apply it. Page 126. This puts us in an entirely new relation to our environment, opening up possibilities hitherto undreamed of, and this by an orderly sequence of law which is naturally involved in our mental attitude. Number 6, mind is creative, and the principle upon which this law is based is sound and legitimate and is inherent in the nature of things, but this creative power does not originate in the individual but in the universal, which is the source and fountain of all energy and substance. The individual is simply the channel for the distribution of the energy. The individual is the means by which the universal produces the various combinations which result in the formation of phenomena. Number 7, we know that scientists have resolved matter into an immense number of molecules. These molecules have been resolved into atoms, and atoms into electrons. Discovery of electrons in high vacuum glass tubes containing fused terminals of hard metal indicates conclusively that these electrons fill all space, that they exist everywhere, that they are omnipresent. They fill all material bodies and occupy the whole of what we call empty space. This then is the universal substance from which all things proceed. Electrons would forever remain electrons unless directed where to go, to be assembled into atoms and molecules. By the way, we're up to number 8. And this director is mind. A number of electrons revolving around a center of force constitutes an atom. Atoms unite in absolutely regular mathematical ratios and form molecules, and these unite with each other to form a multitude of compounds which unite to build the universe. Number 9. The lightest known atom is hydrogen, and this is 1,700 times heavier than an electron. An atom of mercury is 300,000 times heavier than an electron. Electrons are pure negative electricity, and as they have the same potential velocity as all other cosmic energy, such as heat, light, electricity, and thought, of about 186,000 miles a second, neither time nor space requires consideration. The manner in which the velocity of light was ascertained is interesting. Number 10. The velocity of light was obtained by the Danish astronomer Romier in 1676 by observing the eclipse of Jupiter's moons. When the Earth was nearest to Jupiter, the eclipse appeared about 8½ millimeters too soon for the calculations. And when the Earth was most remote from Jupiter, they were about 8½ minutes. They were about 8½ minutes too late. Romeo concluded the reasons to be that it required 17 minutes for light from the planet to traverse the diameter of the Earth's orbit, which measured the difference of the distances of the Earth from Jupiter. This calculation has since been verified and proves that light travels about 186,000 miles a second. Electrons manifest in the body as cells and possess mind and intelligence sufficient for them to perform their offices in the human physical anatomy. Every part of the body is composed of cells, some of which operate independently, others in communities. Some are busy building tissue, while others are engaged in forming the various secretions necessary for the body. Some act as carriers of material, others are the surgeons whose work it is to repair damage. Others are scavengers, carrying off waste. Others are constantly ready to repel invaders or order undesirable intruders of the germ family. 12. All these cells are moving for a common purpose, and each one is not only a living organism, but has sufficient intelligence to enable it to perform its necessary duties. It is also endowed with sufficient intelligence to conserve the energies and perpetuate its own life. It must therefore secure sufficient nourishment, and it has been found that it exercises choice in the election of self-nourishment. Number 13. Each cell is born, reproduces itself, dies, and is absorbed. The maintenance of health and life itself depends upon the constant regeneration of these cells. Number 14. It is therefore apparent that there is mind in every atom of the body. This mind is negative mind, and the power of the individual to think makes him positive, so that he can control this negative mind. This is the scientific explanation for metaphysical healing, and will enable anyone to understand the principle upon which this remarkable phenomenon rests. Let me read that again. Number 14. It is therefore apparent that there is mind in every atom of the body. This mind is negative mind, and the power of the individual to think makes him positive, so that he can control this negative mind. This is the scientific explanation for metaphysical healing, and will enable anyone to understand the principle upon which this remarkable phenomenon rests. Number 15. This negative mind, which is contained in every cell of the body, has been called the subconscious mind because it acts without our conscious knowledge. We have found that the subconscious mind is responsive to the will of the conscious mind. Number 16. All things have their origin in mind, and appearances are the result of thought, so that we see that things in themselves have no origin, permanency, or reality. Since they are produced by thought, they can be erased by thought. Number 17. In mental as in natural science, experiments are being made, and each discovery lifts man one step higher toward his possible goal. We find that every man is a reflection of the thought he has entertained during his lifetime. This is stamped on his face, his form, his character, his environment. 18. Behind every effect there is a cause. And if we follow the trail to its starting point, we shall find the creative principle out of which it grew. Proofs of this are now so complete that this truth is generally accepted. Number 19. The objective world is controlled by an unseen and heretofore unexplainable power. We have heretofore personalized this power and called it God. We have now, however, learned to look upon it as a permeating essence, a principle of all that exists, infinite of universal mind. Number 20. The universal mind, being infinite and omnipotent, has unlimited resources at its command. And when we remember that it is also omnipresent, we cannot escape the conclusion that we must be an expression or manifestation of that mind. A recognition and understanding of the resources of the subconscious mind will indicate that the only difference between the subconscious and the universal is one of degree. They differ only as a drop of water differs from the ocean. They are the same in kind and quality. The difference is one of degree only. 22. Can you appreciate the value of this all-important fact? Do you realize that a recognition of this tremendous fact places you in touch with omnipotence? The subconscious mind, being the connecting link between the universal mind and the conscious mind, is not evident. Is it not evident that the conscious mind can consciously suggest thoughts which the subconscious mind will put into action? And as the subconscious is one of the universal, is it not evident that no limit can be placed upon its activities? 23. A scientific understanding of this principle explains the wonderful results which are secured through the power of prayer. The results which are secured in this way are not brought about by any special dispensations of providence, but on the contrary, they are the results of the operation of a perfectly natural law. There is therefore nothing either religious or mysterious about it. Number 24. Yet there are many who are not ready to enter into the discipline necessary to think correctly, even though it is evident that wrong thinking has brought failure. Number 25. Thought is the only reality. Conditions are but the reward manifestations. As a thought changes, all outward or material conditions must change in order to be in harmony with their creator, which is thought. Number 26. But the thought must be clear-cut, already fixed. Number 26. But the thought must be clear-cut, steady, fixed, definite, unchangeable. You cannot take one step forward and 2 steps backward. Neither can you spend 20 or 30 years of your life building up negative conditions as a result of negative thoughts and then expect to see them all melt away as a result of 15 or 20 minutes of right thinking. Number 27. If you enter into the discipline necessary, I'll repeat that. If you enter into the discipline necessary to bring about a radical change in your life, you must do so deliberately, after giving the matter careful thought and full consideration, and then you must allow nothing to interfere with your decision. This discipline, this change of thought, this mental attitude, this is number 28 by the way, this discipline, this change of thought, this mental attitude will not only bring you the material things which are necessary for your highest and best welfare, but will bring health and harmonious conditions generally. Number 29. If you wish harmonious conditions in your life, you must develop an harmonious mental attitude. Number 30. Your world without will be a reflection of your world within. Number 31. For your next exercise, concentrate on harmony. And when I say concentrate, I mean all that the word implies. Concentrate so deeply, so earnestly, that you will be conscious of nothing but harmony. Remember, we learn by doing. Reading this book will get you nowhere. It is in the practical application that the value consists. Learn to keep the door shut. Keep out of your mind and out of your world every element that seeks admittance with no definite helpful end in view. George Matthew Adams. I'll repeat that because you weren't able to see that when I read that. Learn to keep the door shut. Keep out of your mind and out of your world every element that seeks admittance with no definite, helpful end in view. George Matthew Adams. We are now on page 130. Part 14. 131. What is the source of wisdom, power, and intelligence? The answer? The universal mind. 132. Where do all motion, light, and heat and color have their origin? Answer: in the universal energy, which is one manifestation of the universal mind. Number 133. Where does the negative power of thought originate? Answer: in the universal mind. Number 134. What is thought? Answer: mind in motion. 135. How is the universal differentiated in form? Answer: the individual is the means by which the universal produces the various combinations which result in formation of phenomena. 136. How is this accomplished? The power of the individual to think is his ability to act upon the universal and bring it into manifestation. Number 137. What is the first form which the universal takes so far as we know? Answer: electrons which fill all space. 138. Where do all things have their origin? Answer: in mind. 139. What is the result of a change of thought? Answer: a change in conditions. 140. What is the result of an harmonious mental attitude? Answer: harmonious conditions in life. Thought, immaterial thought it may be, is a matrix that shapes the issues of life. The mind has been active in all fields during this fruitful century, but it is to science we must look into. But it is to science we must look for the thoughts that have shaped all thinking. Selected. Let me repeat that. Thoughts, immaterial though it may be, is the matrix that shapes the issues of life. The mind has been active in all fields during the fruitful century, but it is to science we must look for the thoughts that have shaped all thinking. Selected. Part 15. Before I proceed, please, I want to ask you to kindly share your feedback and do subscribe if you haven't already. And please let me know what you think. I appreciate your feedback. Part 15, we're on page 131. This part explains the law of growth and explains why we cannot obtain if we tenaciously cling to what we have, and that difficulties, disharmonies, and obstacles indicate that we are either refusing to give up what we no longer need or refusing to accept what we require. We are holding on to worn-out, useless material, or we are allowing a deficiency to exist and are not obtaining the material necessary for our growth. It explains how the ability to appropriate what we require for our growth is secured. It explains how vitality is important to thought and what determines the importance of words, the vessels in which thought is carried, how abundance may be secured, and why we must be prepared to assume the responsibility for every thought and action. It explains the necessity of insight, its value, in examining facts and conditions at long range and in turning our attention to profitable channels instead of working with problems which contain no possibility of any kind. Experiments with parasites found on plants indicate that even the lowest order of life is unable to take advantage of natural law. This experiment was made by Jacques Loeb, MD, PhD, a member of the Rockefeller Institute. Quote, in order to obtain the material, potted rose bushes are brought into a room and placed in front of a closed window. If the plants are allowed to dry out, the aphids, parasites, in parentheses, previously winglets, change to winged insects. After the metamorphosis, the animals leave the plants, fly to the window, and then creep upward on the glass. It is evident that these tiny insects found that the plants on which they have been thriving were dead, and that they could therefore secure nothing more to eat and drink from the source. So the only method by which they could save themselves from starvation was to grow temporary wings and fly, which they did. Experiments such as these indicate that omniscience as well as omnipotence is omnipresent, and that the tiniest living thing can take advantage of it in an emergency. Part 15 will tell you more about the laws under which we live. It will explain that these laws operate to our advantage, that all conditions and experiences that come to us are for our benefit, that we gain strength in proportion to the effort expended, and that our happiness is best attained through a conscious cooperation with natural law. The laws under which we live are designed solely for our advantage. These laws are immutable, and we cannot escape from their operation. Number 2, all the great eternal forces act in solemn silence, but it is in our power to place ourselves in harmony with them, and thus express a life of comparative peace and happiness. Number 3, difficulties, disharmonies, and obstacles indicate that we are either refusing to give out what we no longer need or refusing to accept what we require. Number 4, growth is attained through an exchange of the old for the new, of the good for the better. It is a conditional or reciprocal action. For each of us is a complete thought entity, and this completeness makes it possible for us to receive only as we give. Number 5, we cannot obtain what we lack if we tenaciously cling to what we have. We are able consciously to control our conditions as we come to sense the purpose of what we attract, and are able to extract from each experience only what we require for our further growth. Our ability to do this determines the degree of harmony or happiness we attain. Number 6, the ability to appropriate what we require for our growth continually increases as we reach higher planes and broader visions. And the greater our ability to know what we require, the more certain we shall be to discern its presence, to attract it, and to absorb it. Nothing may reach us except what is necessary for our growth. Number 7, all conditions and experiences come to us to do so for our benefit. Difficulties and obstacles will continue to come until we absorb their wisdom and gather from them the essentials of further growth. Number 8, that we reap what we sow is mathematically exact. We gain permanent strength exactly to the extent of the effort required to overcome difficulties. Number 9, the inexorable requirements of growth demand that we exert the greatest degree of attraction for what is perfectly in accord with us. Our highest happiness will be best attained through our understanding of and conscious cooperation with natural laws. Number 10, in order to process vitality, thought must be impregnated with love. Love is a product of the emotions. It is therefore essential that the emotions be controlled and guided by the intellect and reason. Number 11, it is love which imparts vitality to thought and thus enables it to germinate. The law of attraction or law of love, for they are one and the same, will bring to it the necessary material for its growth and maturity. Number 12, the first form which thought will find its language, Number 12, the first form which thought will find is language, or words. This determines the importance of words. They are the first manifestation of thought, the vessels in which thought is carried. They take hold of the ether, and by setting it in motion, reproduce the thought to others in the form of sound. Number 13, thought may lead to action of any kind. But whatever the action, it is simply the thought attempting to express itself in visible form. It is evident, therefore, that if we wished desirable conditions, we can afford no. Sorry. It is evident, therefore, that if we wish to. I beg your pardon. It is evident, therefore, that if we wish desirable conditions, we can afford to entertain only desirable thoughts. Number 14. This leads to the inevitable conclusion that if we wish to express abundance in our lives, we can afford to think abundance only. And as words are only thoughts taking form, we must be especially careful to use nothing but constructive and harmonious language, which, when finally crystallized into objective forms, will prove to our advantage. We cannot escape from the pictures we incessantly photograph on the mind, and this photography of erroneous conceptions is exactly what is being done by the use of words. When we use any form of language which is not identified with our welfare. Number 16. We manifest more and more life as our thought becomes clarified and takes higher planes. This is obtained with greater faculty. As we use word pictures that are clearly defined and relieved of the conceptions attached to them on lower planes of thought. Number 17. It is with words that we must express our thoughts. And if we are to make use of higher forms of truth, we may use only such material as has been carefully and intelligently selected with this purpose in view. Number 18. This wonderful power of clothing thoughts in the form of words is what differentiates man from the rest of the animal kingdom. By the use of the written word, he has been enabled to look back over the centuries and see the stirring scenes by which he has come into his present inheritance. Number 19. He has been able to come into communion with the greatest writers and thinkers of all time, and the combined record which we possess today is therefore expression of universal thought, as it has been seeking to take form of the mind of man. Number 20. We know that the universal thought has for its goal the creation of form, and we know that the individual thought is likewise forever attempting to express itself in form, and we know that the word is a thought form, and a sentence is a combination of thought forms. Therefore, if we wish our ideal to be beautiful or strong, we must see that the words out of which this temple will eventually be created are exact, that they are put together carefully, because accuracy in building words and sentences is the highest form of architecture and civilization and is a passport to success. Number 21. Words are thoughts and are therefore an invisible and invincible power, which will finally objectify themselves in the form they are given. 22. Words may become mental palaces that will live forever, or they may become shanties, which the first breeze will carry away. They may delight the eye as well as the ear. They may contain all knowledge. In them we find the history of the past, as well as the hope of the future. They are living messengers. From which every human and superhuman activity is born. Number 23. The beauty of the word consists in the beauty of the thought. The power of the word consists in the power of the thought. And the power of the thought consists in its vitality. How shall we identify a vital thought? What are its distinguishing characteristics? It must have principle. How shall we identify principle? There is a principle of mathematics, but none of error. There is a principle of health, but none of disease. There is a principle of truth, but none of dishonesty. There is a principle of light, but none of darkness. And there is a principle of abundance, but none of poverty. Number 25. How shall we know that this is true? Because if we apply the principle of mathematics correctly, we shall be certain of our results. Where there is health, there will be no disease. If we know the truth, we cannot be deceived by error. If we let in light, there can be no darkness. And where there is abundance, there can be no poverty. Number 26. These are self-evident facts. But the all-important truth that a thought containing principle is vital and therefore contains life and consequently takes root and eventually but surely and certainly displaces a negative thought, which by their very nature cannot contain no vitality, is one which seems to have been overlooked. Number 27. But this is a fact which will enable you to destroy every manner of discord, lack, and limitation. Number 28. There can be no question but that he who is wise enough to understand will readily recognize that the creative power of thought places an invincible weapon in his hands and makes him a master of destiny. Number 29. In the physical world, there is a law of compensation, which is that the appearance of a given amount of energy anywhere means the disappearance of the same amount somewhere else. And so we find that we can get only what we give. If we pledge ourselves to a certain action, we must be prepared to assume the responsibility for the development of that action. The subconscious cannot reason. It takes us at our word. We have asked for something, we are now to receive it. We have made our bed, we are now to lie on it. The die has been cast, the threads will carry out the pattern we have made. Number 30. For this reason, insight must be exercised so that the thought which we entertain contains no mental, moral, or physical germ which we do not wish objectified in our lives. Number 31. Insight is a faculty of the mind whereby we are enabled to examine facts and conditions at long range. A kind of human telescope. It enables us to understand the difficulties as well as the possibilities in any undertaking. Number 32. Insight enables us to be prepared for the obstacles which we shall meet. We can therefore overcome them before they have any opportunity for causing difficulty. Page number 136, number 33. Insight enables us to plan to advantage. Insight enables us to plan to advantage and turn our thoughts and attention in the right direction, instead of into channels which can yield no possible return. Number 34. Insight is therefore absolutely essential for the development of any great achievement. With it we may enter, explore, and possess any mental field. Number 35. Insight is a product of the world within and is developed in the silence by concentration. Number 36. For your next exercise, concentrate on insight. Take your accustomed position and focus the thought on the fact that to have a knowledge of the creative power of thought does not mean to possess the art of thinking. Let the thought dwell on the fact that knowledge does not apply itself. That our actions are not governed by knowledge, but by custom, precedent, and habit. That is the only way we can get ourselves to apply knowledge, is by determined, conscious effort. Call to mind the fact that knowledge unused passes from the mind, that the value of information is in the application of the principle. Continue this line of thought until you gain sufficient insight to formulate a definition program for applying this principle to your own particular problem. Let me repeat that, as suggested. Call to mind the fact that knowledge unused passes from the mind, that the value of the information is in the application of the principle. Continue this line of thought until you gain sufficient insight to formulate a definite program for applying this principle to your own particular problem. Think truly, and thy thoughts shall the world's famine feed. Speak truly, and each word of thine shall be a fruitful seed. Live truly, and thy life shall be a great and noble creed. Horatio Bonner, Part 15, 141. What determines the degree of harmony which we attain? Answer: our ability to appropriate what we require for our growth from each experience. Number 142. What do difficulties and obstacles indicate? What do difficulties and obstacles indicate in 142? That they are necessary for our wisdom and spiritual growth. Number 143. How may these difficulties be avoided? By a conscious understanding of and cooperation with natural laws. 144. What is the principle by which thought manifests itself in form? Answer: The law of love, which is a creative principle of the universe, imparts vitality to the thought, and the law of attraction brings the necessary substance by the law of growth. 146. How are desirable conditions secured? Answer: by entertaining desirable thoughts only. 147. How are undesirable conditions brought about? By thinking, discussing, and visualizing conditions of lack, limitation, disease, disharmony, and discord of every kind. The mental photography of erroneous conceptions is taken up by the subconscious, and the law of attraction will inevitably crystallize it into objective form. That we reap what we sow is scientifically exact. 148. How can we overcome every kind of fear, lack, limitation, poverty, and discord? By substituting principle for error. 149. How may we recognize principle? By a conscious realization of the fact that truth invariably destroys error. We do not have to laboriously shovel the darkness out. All that is necessary is to turn on the light. The same principle applies to every form of negative thought. What is the value of insight? This is in 150. It enables us to understand the value of making application of the knowledge which we gain. Many seem to think that knowledge will automatically apply itself, which is by no means true. Number 150, I'll repeat 150 again. What is the value of insight? It enables us to understand the value of making application of the knowledge of which we gain. Many seem to think that knowledge would automatically apply itself, which is by no means true. Part 16. This part explains the nature of wealth. It shows how it is created and upon what it depends. It shows why success is contingent upon an ideal higher than the mere accumulation of riches. It shows that success depends upon creative ability and explains the necessary condition for attainment. It explains why premature wealth is but the forerunner of humiliation and disaster. It explains the methods by which we may take our fate out of the hands of chance and consciously make for ourselves the conditions which we desire. It tells how we may compel success by utilization of scientific and exact methods. And it explains that while we have the ability to create harmonious and constructive conditions, we also have the ability to create inharmonious and destructive conditions. And unfortunately, through ignorance of the law, this is what many are doing. The vibratory activities of the planetary universe are governed by a law of periodicity. Everything that lives has periods of birth, growth, fruition, and decline. These periods are governed by this septimal law. The law of sevens governs the days of the week, the phases of the moon, the harmonies of sound, light, heat, electricity, magnetism, atomic structure. It governs the life of individuals and of nations, and it dominates the activities of the commercial world. Life is growth, and growth is change. Each 7 years period takes us into a new cycle. The first 7 years is the period of infancy. The next 7 years, the period of childhood, representing the beginning of individual responsibility. The next 7 represents the period of adolescence. The fourth period marks the attainment of full growth. The fifth period is the constructive period when men begin to acquire property, possessions, a home, and family. The next, from 35 to 32, is a period of reactions and changes. And this in turn is followed by a period of reconstruction, adjustment, and I'm going to repeat that. I don't think you could see that properly. Let me repeat that. The fifth period is the constructive period when men begin to acquire property, possessions, a home, and family. The next, from 35 to 42, is a period of reactions and changes, and this in turn is followed by a period of reconstruction, adjustment, and recuperation, so as to be ready for a new cycle of sevens, beginning with the 50th year. There are many who think that the world is just about to pass out of the sixth period, that it will soon enter into the seventh period. the period of readjustment, reconstruction, and harmony, the period which is frequently referred to as the millennium. Those familiar with these cycles will not be disturbed when things seem to go wrong, but can apply the principle outlined in the MasterKey with full assurance that a higher law will invariably control all other laws, and that through an understanding and conscious operation of spiritual laws we can convert every seeming difficulty into a blessing. Wealth is a product of labor. Wealth is a product of labor. Capital is an effect, not a cause. A servant, not a master. A means, not an end. 2. The most commonly accepted definition of wealth is that it consists of all useful and agreeable things, which possesses exchange value. It is this exchange value which is the predominant characteristic of wealth. Number 3. When we consider the small addition made by wealth to the happiness of the professor, we find that the true value consists not in its utility, but in its exchange value. Number 4. This exchange value makes it a medium for securing the things of real value whereby our ideals may be realized. Number 5. Wealth should then never be desired as an end, but simply as a means of accomplishing an end. Success is contingent upon a higher ideal than the mere accumulation of riches, and he who aspires to such success must formulate an ideal for which he is willing to strive. Number 6. With such an ideal in mind, the ways and means can and will be provided, but the mistake must not be made of substituting the means for the end. There must be a definite fixed purpose and ideal. Number 7. Prentice Mulford said, the man of success is the man possessed at the greatest spiritual understanding, and every great fortune comes of superior and truly spiritual power. Unfortunately, there are those who fail to recognize this power and forget that Andrew Carnegie's mother had to help support the family when they went to America, that Harriman's father was a poor clergyman with a salary of only £40 a year, that Sir Thomas Lipton started with only 1 shilling. These men had no other power to depend upon, but it did not fail them. Number 8. The power to create depends entirely upon spiritual power. There are 3 steps: idealization, visualization, and materialization. Every captain of industry depends upon this power exclusively. An article in Everybody's Magazine, Henry Flagler, the Standard Oil multimillionaire, admitted that the secret of his success was his power to see a thing in its completeness. The following conversation with a reporter shows his power of idealization, concentration, and visualization, all spiritual powers. Number 9, quote, did you actually picture to yourself the whole thing? I mean, did you or could you really close your eyes and see the tracks and the trains running and hear the whistles blowing? Did you go as far as that? Quote, yes, end quote. Quote, how clearly? End quote. Quote, very clearly. Number 10, here we have a vision of the law. We see, quote, cause and effect, end quote. We see that thought necessarily precedes and determines action. If we are wise, we shall come into a realization of the tremendous fact that no arbitrary condition can exist for a moment, and that the human experience is the result of an orderly and harmonious sequence. Number 11, the successful businessman is more often than not an idealist and is ever striving for higher and higher standards. The subtle forces of thought as they crystallize in our daily moods are what constitute life. Number 12, thought is the plastic material with which we build images of our growing conception of life. Use determines existence. As in all other things, our ability to recognize it and use it properly is a necessary condition for attainment. Number 13, premature wealth is but the forerunner of humiliation and disaster, because we cannot permanently retain anything which we do not merit or which we have not earned. Number 14. The conditions with which we meet in the world without correspond to the conditions with which we find in the world within. This is brought about by the law of attraction. How then shall we determine what is to enter into the world within? Number 15. Whatever enters the mind through the senses or the objective mind will impress the mind and result in a mental image, which will become a pattern for the creative energies. These experiences are largely the result of environment, chance, past thinking, and other forms of negative thought, and must be subjected to careful analysis before being entertained. On the other hand, we can form our own mental images through our own interior processes of thought, regardless of the thoughts of others, regardless of exterior conditions, regardless of environment of every kind. And it is by the exercise of this power that we can control our own destiny, body, mind, and soul. I'm going to repeat number 15 because it's vital. Number 15, whatever enters the mind through the senses of, I beg your pardon. Number 15, whatever enters the mind through the senses or the objective mind will impress the mind and result in a mental image, which will become a pattern for the creative energies. These experiences are largely the result of environment, chance, past thinking, and other forms of negative thought, and must be subjected to careful analysis before being entertained. On the other hand, we can form our own mental image through our own interior processes of thought, regardless of the thought of others, regardless of exterior conditions, regardless of environment of every kind. And it is by the exercise of this power that we can control our own destiny, body, mind, and soul. Number 16. It is by the exercise of this power that we take our fate out of the hands of chance and consciously make for ourselves the experiences which we desire. Because when we consciously realize a condition, that condition will eventually manifest in our lives. It is therefore evident that the last analysis thinking is the one great cause in life. Number 17. Therefore, to control thought is to control circumstances, conditions, environment, and destiny. Number 18. How then are we to control thought? What is the process? To think is to create a thought, but the result of the thought will depend upon its form, its quality, and its vitality. Number 19. The form will depend upon the mental image from which it emanates. This will depend upon the depth of the impression, the predominance of the idea, the clarity of the vision, the boldness of the image. Number 20. The quality depends upon its substance, and this depends upon the material of which the mind is composed. If this material has been woven from thoughts of vigor, strength, courage, determination, the thought will possess these qualities. I'm going to repeat number 20 because this is vital. The quality depends upon its substance, and this depends upon the material of which the mind is composed. If this material has been woven from thoughts of vigor, strength, courage, determination, the thought will possess these qualities. Number 21. And finally, the vitality depends upon the feeling with which the thought is impregnated. If the thought is constructive, it will possess vitality. It will have life. It will grow, develop, expand. It will be creative, and it will attract to itself everything necessary for its complete development. Number 22. If the thought is destructive, it will have within itself the germ of its own dissolution. It will die, but in the process of dying, it will bring sickness, disease, and every other form of discord. Number 23. Wow. I have to read number 22 again because that is of vital importance for us to remember. If the thought is destructive, it will have within itself the germ of its own dissolution. It will die, but in the process of dying, it will bring sickness, disease, and every other form of discord. Number 23. This we call evil, and when we bring it upon ourselves, some of us are disposed to attribute our difficulties to a supreme being, but this supreme being is simply mind in equilibrium. Number 24. It is neither good nor bad, it simply is. Number 25. Our ability to differentiate it into form is our ability to manifest good or evil. Good and evil, therefore, are not entities. They are simply words which we use to indicate the result of our actions, and these actions are in turn predetermined by the character of our thought. Number 27. If our thought is constructive and harmonious, we manifest good. If it is destructive and discordant, we manifest evil. 28. If you desire to visualize a different environment, the process is simply to hold the ideal in mind until your vision has been made real. Give no thought to no persons, places, or things. These have no place in the absolute. The environment you desire will contain everything necessary. The right persons and the right things will come at the right time and in the right place. Number 29. It is sometimes not plain how character, ability, attainment, achievement, environment, and destiny can be controlled through the power of visualization, but this is an exact scientific fact. Number 30. You will readily see that what we think determines the quality of mind, and the quality of mind in turn determines our ability and mental capacity. And you can readily understand that an improvement in our ability will naturally be followed by increase in attainment and a greater control of circumstances. It will thus be seen that natural laws work in a perfectly natural and harmonious manner. Everything seems to just happen. If you want any evidence of this fact, simply compare results of your efforts in your own life when your actions were prompted by high ideals and when you had selfish or ulterior motives in mind. You will find no further evidence. Number 32. If you wish to bring about the realization of any desire, form a mental picture of success in your mind by consciously visualizing your desire. In this way, you will be compelling success. You will be externalizing it in your life by scientific methods. Number 33. We can see only what already exists in the objective world, but what we visualize already exists in the spiritual world. And this visualization is a substantial token of what will one day appear in the objective world. If we are faithful to our ideal, the reason for this is not difficult. Visualization is a form of imagination. This process of thinking forms impressions in the mind, and these impressions in turn form concepts and ideals, and they in turn are the plans from which the master architect will weave the future. Number 34. The psychologists have come to the conclusion that there is but one sense, the sense of feeling, and that all other senses are but modifications of this one sense. This being true, we know why feeling is the very fountainhead of power, why the emotions so easily overcome the intellect, and why we must put feeling into our thoughts if we wish results. Thought and feeling are the irresistible combination. Number 35. Visualization must, of course, be Number 35. Visualization must, of course, be directed by the will. We are to visualize exactly what we want. We must be careful not to let the imagination run riot. Imagination is a good servant, but a poor master. And unless it is controlled, it may easily lead us into all kinds of speculations and conclusions which have no basis or foundation of fact whatever. Every kind of plausible opinion is liable to be accepted without any analytical examination, and the inevitable result is mental chaos. Number 36. We must therefore construct only such mental images as are known to be scientifically true. Subject every idea to a searching analysis and accept nothing which is not scientifically exact. When you do this, you will attempt nothing but what you know you can carry out, and success will crown your efforts. This is what businessmen call farsightedness. It is much the same as insight, and is one of the great secrets of success in all important undertakings. Number 37. For your next exercise, try to bring yourself to a realization of the important fact that harmony and happiness are states of consciousness and do not depend upon the possession of things. That things are effects and come as a consequence of correct mental states. So that if we desire material possession of any kind, our chief concern should be to acquire the mental attitude which will bring about the result desired. This mental attitude is brought about by a realization of our spiritual nature and our unity with the universal mind, which is the substance of all things. This realization will bring about everything which is necessary for our complete enjoyment. This is scientific or correct thinking. When we succeed in bringing about this mental attitude, it is comparatively easy to realize our desire as an already accomplished fact. When we can do this, we shall have found the truth, which makes us free from every lack or limitation of any kind. A man might frame and let loose a star to roll in its orbit, and yet not have done so memorable a thing before God as he who lets a golden orbed thought to roll through the generations of time. H.W. Beecher. Part 16. 151. Upon what does wealth depend? Answer: upon an understanding of the creative nature of thought. 152. In what does its true value consist? Answer: in its exchange value. 153. Upon what does success depend? Answer: upon spiritual power. 154. Upon what does this power depend? Answer: upon use determines its existence. 155. How may we take our fate out of the hands of chance? Answer: by consciously realizing the conditions which we desire to see manifested in our lives. 156. What then is the great business of life? Answer: thinking. 157. Why is it so? Answer: because thought is spiritual and therefore creative. Consciously to control thought is therefore to control circumstances, conditions, environment, and destiny. 158. What is the source of all evil? Answer: destructive thinking. 159. What is the source of all good? Answer: scientific correct thinking. 160. What is scientific thinking? Answer: a recognition of the creative nature of spiritual energy and our ability to control it. Quote: to every man there openeth a way, and the high soul climbs the highway, and the low soul gropes the low, and in between, on the misty flats, the rest drift to and fro. But to every man there openeth a highway and a low, and every man decideth the way his soul shall go. Page 146, part 17. Please share your feedback, please share your thoughts and comments, and please subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate your time. Thank you for reading with me. It's much appreciated. Part 17. This part tells of the law of vibration and why the highest principle necessarily determines the circumstances, aspects, and relations of everything with which it comes in contact. It tells why and how a knowledge of these higher forces makes all physical force sink into insignificance. It explains the nature of concentration. It tells something of the practice of concentration. It tells something of the results of concentration. It tells how the mind may become a magnet, how it may irresistibly attract the conditions which it desires. It tells why it is necessary to be in order to have. It tells how to unfasten the present bars of weakness, impotence, and self-belittlement, and realize the joy of overcoming obstacles. It tells how the intuitive power is set in operation and how this inevitably leads to success. It tells of the difference between real power and the symbols of power, and why the symbols turn to ashes just as we overtake them. The kind of deity which a man consciously or unconsciously worships indicates the intellectual status of the worshipper. Ask the Indian of God, and he will describe to you a powerful chieftain of a glorious tribe. Ask the pagan of God, and he will tell you of a god of fire, a god of water, a god of this, that, and the other. Ask the Israelite of God, and he will tell you of the God of Moses, who conceived it expedient to rule by coercive measure, hence the 10 Commandments. Or he will tell you of Joshua, who led the Israelites into battle, confiscated property, murdered the prisoners, and laid cities waste. The so-called heathen made graven images of their gods, whom they were accustomed to worship, but among the most intelligent at least, these images were but the visible emblems which they used to facilitate mental concentration on the qualities which they desired to externalize in their lives. I'm going to repeat that because I'm not sure if you were able to read that whilst I read that. But among the most intelligent, at least, these images were but the visible emblems which they used to facilitate mental concentration on the qualities which they desired to externalize in their lives. We of the 20th century worship a god of love in theory, but in practice we make for ourselves graven images of wealth, power, fashion, custom, and conventionality. We fall down before them and worship them. We concentrate on them, and they are thereby externalized in our lives. The reader who masters the contents of Part 17 will not mistake symbols for reality. He'll be interested in causes rather than effects. He will concentrate on the realities of life and will then not be disappointed in the results. Number 1. We are told that man has dominion over all things. This dominion is established through mind. Thought is the activity which controls every principle beneath it. The highest principle, by reason of its superior essence and qualities, necessarily determines the circumstances, aspects, and relation of everything with which it comes into contact. Number 2, the vibration of mental forces are the finest and consequently the most powerful in existence. To those who perceive the nature and transcendency of mental force, all physical power sinks into insignificance. Number 3, we are accustomed to look upon the universe with a lens of 5 senses, and from these experiences, our anthropomorphic conceptions originate. But true conceptions are only secured by spiritual insight. This insight requires a quickening of the vibrations of the mind, and is only secured when the mind is continuously concentrated in a given direction. Number 4, continuous concentration means an even, unbroken flow of thought, and is the result of patient, persistent, persevering, and well-regulated system. 5, great discoveries are the result of long, continued investigation. The science of mathematics requires years of concentrated effort to master it. And the greatest science, that the mind is revealed only through concentrated effort. Concentration is much misunderstood. There seems to be an idea of effort or activity associated with it, when just the contrary is necessary. The greatness of an actor lies in the fact that he forgets himself in the portrayal of his character, becoming so identified with it that the audience is swayed by the realism of the performance. This will give you a good idea of true concentration. You should be so interested in your thought, so engrossed in your subject, as to be conscious of nothing else. Such concentration leads to intuitive perception and immediate insight into the nature of object concentrated upon. Number 7, all knowledge is a result of concentration. Of this kind, it is thus that the secrets have been wrested from heaven and earth. It is thus that the mind becomes a magnet, and the desire to know draws the knowledge, irresistibly attracts it, makes it your own. Number 8, desire is largely subconscious. Conscious desire really realizes its object, and when the latter is out of immediate reach, subconscious desire arouses the latent faculties of the mind, and difficult problems seem to solve themselves. Number 9. The subconscious mind may be aroused and brought into action in any direction and made to serve us for any purpose by concentration. The practice of concentration requires the control of the physical, mental, and physical being, or modes of consciousness, whether physical, mental, or physical, must be under. I'll repeat that. The practice of concentration requires the control of the physical, mental, and physical being, or modes of consciousness, whether physical, mental, or physical. One is physical and the other one is psychical. Must be under control. Number 10. Spiritual truth is therefore the controlling factor. It is this which will enable you to grow out of limited attainment and reach a point which you will be able to translate modes of thought into character and consciousness. Number 11. Concentration does not mean mere thinking of thoughts, but the transmutation of these thoughts into practical values. The average person has no conception of the meaning of concentration. There is always the cry to have, but never the cry to be. People fail to understand that they cannot have one without the other, that they must find the kingdom before they can have the things added. Momentary enthusiasm is of no value. It is only by unbounded self-confidence that the goal is reached. Number 12. The mind may place the ideal a little too high and fall short of the mark. It may attempt to soar on untrained wings and instead of flying, fall to earth. But that is no reason for making another attempt. 13. Weakness. Weakness is the only barrier to mental attainment. Attribute your weakness to physical limitations or mental uncertainties, and try again. Ease and perfection are gained by repetition. 14. The astronomer centers his mind on the stars and they give forth their secrets. The geologist centers his mind on the construction of the earth, and we have a geology. So with all things, men center their minds on the problems of life, and the result is apparent in the vast and complex social order of the day. Number 15. All mental discovery and attainment are the result of desire plus concentration. Desire is the strongest motive to action. The more persistent the desire, the more authoritative the revelation. Desire added to concentration will wrench any secret from nature. (16) In realizing great thoughts, in experiencing great emotions that correspond with great thoughts, the mind is in a state where it appreciates the value of high things. Number 17, the intensity of a moment's earnest concentration and the intense longing to become and to attain may take you further than years of slow, normal, and forced effort. It will unfasten the present bars of unbelief, weakness, impotence, and self-belittlement, and you will come into a realization of the joy of overcoming. Number 18, the spirit of initiative and originality is developed through persistence and continuity of mental effort. Business teaches the value of concentration and encourages the decision of character. It develops practical insight and quickness of the conclusion. The mental element in every commercial pursuit is dominant as the controlling factor, and desire is the predominating factor. All commercial relations are the externalization of desire. Number 19, many of the sturdy and substantial virtues are developed in commercial employment. The mind is studied and directed, it becomes efficient. The principal necessity is the strengthening of the mind so that it rises superior to the distractions and wayward impulses of instinctive life, and thus successfully prevails in the conflict between the higher and lower self. Number 20, all of us are dynamos, but the dynamo of itself is nothing. The mind must work the dynamo. Then it is useful, and its energy can be definitely concentrated. The mind is an engine whose power is undreamed of. Thought is an omniworking power. It is the ruler and creator of all forms and all events occurring in form. Physical energy is nothing in comparison with the omnipotence of thoughts, because thought enables man to harness all other natural power. We are on page 150. I'm going to go to bed. I appreciate your feedback. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It means a lot to me. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to read this amazing book with me. This book is a life changer. It's a game changer. Please share your feedback. I look forward to seeing it. Have a lovely evening. Remember, you are a beacon of light, and you are amazing. I love you.